the way in which we're approaching what is happening at the moment, the way we're approaching this crisis that is the coronavirus, is that most of us are thinking, how do we get through this crisis? We just want to get through this crisis, just want to get to the other side of the crisis, just want to get back to something that was, something that's dead, some experience that we were living before. We want to get back to that. We actually often say that. We say, I just want to get back to how it was with this person or this place. So now we just want to get through this thing. And when we just want to get through this thing, we're constantly attending to the future, to the idea that we have of what's on the other side of it. Or we're constantly reflecting on the past and how it was before this crisis happened. And when we try to get through something, which is most of our life, whenever there's any form of challenge or discomfort, our mindset is just to get through this. And not only just to get through this, we negotiate with ourselves and say, when I get through this, once we get through this, then we'll start to make some changes. Once I get through this, don't bother me right now. I'm right in the thick of things. I don't want to talk to anybody. This is just a very intense challenge. But when I get through it, then I'm going to make some significant changes in my life. We seem to do this with almost everything. Everything that we're significantly challenged by. We do this with wars all the time. We have remembrance days. We have days of reflection, months of reflection, decades of reflection. And it doesn't change one bit our warring nature, the warring nature of our mind. We'll go back to war in an instant. With the right provocation, the right impetus, the warring mind will come up very readily. It does so in our day-to-day life already. We just don't see it. It's covered under the veil of acceptability given the circumstances, when we can be very violent in our behavior, in our speech, in our writing, in our texting, in our emailing. We can be very violent because it was necessary. I needed to say this to this person, and I needed to say it in that way. So we don't see that it's the same violence that makes us go to war. And getting through things will never change the state of our mind. You'll get through this anyway. And in the extreme, you're either going to be alive or dead. If you're dead, you will have no concern in the world about this crisis that you didn't get through. But those who are not going to die from the crisis are going to get through the crisis, just as they do through any other crisis. If your life is a series of things that you have gotten through, experiences that you have gotten through, there's no implication of wisdom. There's no implication of evolution even. There's just the living of experiences. Insight isn't gained from the living of experiences, getting through things, getting through your life. It bothered me even when I was a young boy that I was always told wisdom came with age, and I didn't see that around me. I didn't see older people always being wise. In fact, it seemed quite stupid sometimes, the things they said and the things that they did and the conclusions that they came to. So I realized that it didn't come with age. And as I matured, that became very obvious to me. People live experiences, and they even share those experiences. The way in which they reacted to those experiences, they share with others by saying, in my experience, this is true. In my experience, when you're dealing with something like that, this is what happens. Well, what relevance does that have? How does that affect me? It has no relevance to me whatsoever, because I am not you. I don't have your mind, your conditioning, your memories, your past experiences, and the knowledge that you have from those past experiences. I don't have that. So my experience will be entirely different. The only way this mind activates the field of wisdom, enters the field of wisdom, is when it enters the experience. When you stop trying to get through the experience and you start recognizing you're in the experience and you awaken to that, that's where wisdom comes, where wisdom meets you. That's where insight can be born. You can't achieve it. You can't reach for it. You can't negotiate to getting it somehow by trying to be present, trying to be engaged. It's simply that it's nowhere else to be found. It's certainly not to be found in the future or in the past. So if there's evolution to be experienced within this mind, if a mutation is to occur in this mind, it can only ever happen now, in the experience, through total engagement with the experience. No distractions, no projections, no imaginations, no speculations of what is to come, just total engagement, moment to moment. Observing without a view, without a center. We are often taught to look at things from a different perspective. People say, well, look at it from his perspective, from her perspective, from this perspective, from that perspective. And momentarily, this creates a little ripple in the mind, and we're mesmerized by this. Wow, when I look at it from this perspective, it looks so different. I can imagine how it could be for that person, only momentarily, because the mind allows it momentarily. But then the conditioning sets in again, and I say, yes, but I just can't understand why they have to do it this way. I just can't quite understand why they have to look at it in this way. But they are. It doesn't matter how many perspectives I take, how many centers I create from which to view the world. I'm still viewing from a center. And that center has its own preconceptions, its own ideologies, its own constructs, its own lens. So the more I'm trying to find the right center to look at the world from, the more judgment, the more interpretation, the more distress I'll see all around me. While the observer is there, there's no truth. There's just a new lens, a different lens. We'll always see through the veil of right and wrong, good and bad, positive and negative, some quintessential duality. We'll never see the truth. We'll never see things exactly as they are. We'll always see ourselves as separate from it, because where there's an observer, there's separation. There's something, a vantage point, a center looking at something else. We don't have an intimacy with what is. We don't have an intimacy with existence itself. We start with separation, and then we try to find unity or find intimacy from the point of separation. We try to acquire it. But this is not possible. So how does the body become an interface for consciousness? How do we utilize the body as an interface for consciousness, an interface to the non-dual? When we feel, we begin to sense the truest expression of our response to our relationship with actuality. The formation of the lens is the reaction that we feel in the body. That forms the observer. The reaction forms the observer. And the observer forms the reaction. When we are simply feeling what's in the body, we're with an expression of energy prior to an association with thought. The more elaborate our descriptions of what we feel, perhaps I should qualify that, the more emotional we become with our descriptions. We talk about anger, fear, jealousy, resentment, guilt, agitation. The more we name what we feel as an emotion, the stronger the association is with an observer, or with an I, an entity. I that is angry, I that is jealous, I that is fearful. And the moment there's association with the I, there's an immediate implication that the I should be more, should be different. The I isn't good enough. The I shouldn't be angry. The I shouldn't be fearful. The I shouldn't be resentful. This is not good. This is bad. This is not good conduct. This is not good state of being. It should be something else. There's immediate judgment. The observer is there, and the judgment forms more of itself. It reinforces the observer. And then as it comes to a conclusion of how to resolve that judgment, it has formed another judgment. And so it continues ad infinitum. And we convince ourselves that we are becoming more like this, less like that. But we are not actually going anywhere. We're standing still at a point and just reinforcing the same predicament that we were in to begin with. We're recreating this vantage point, this observer, and constantly reinforcing it. The body can take us beyond that. It can open a door to take us beyond the observer if we're willing to observe sensation as sensation. To observe the body as the body, sensation as sensation, to see it for what it is. This momentary transient expression of an accumulation of the psyche, an unfiltered expression, uninterpreted expression. And if we can stay with that expression without drawing a conclusion, without interpreting, a truth can begin to unfold because the lens becomes clearer. The lens is cleaning itself now. There's no person there trying to fix it. There's nothing to be fixed. This is already unfolding itself. It's self-cleaning. The innate capacity to thrive, to behold or to experience truth is illuminating itself. It doesn't require a mind to be in there doing things. When you're observing what's happening in the body, you are observing beyond mind. You are observing beyond the observer. And this is not an intellectual thing. This is not something that you can think about and then go and try to do. You have to see that the observation of the sensation is not separate. I'm not separate from the sensation, just as I described earlier, the non-separation from the sound. The sound is there. The listener is there. The listener is not separate to the sound. The feeling of prickliness bubbles up in the body. The feeling of tension, tightness bubbles up in the body. The moment you add a description to that, I'm feeling a bit anxious today, I'm feeling a bit stressed today. It's okay, but you're also creating an observer, an assessor, looking at what's happening, and so separating ourselves from it. When you are simply seeing, there's this contraction in the chest, and even as I observe the contraction, I see there's more to it. There's a mobility to it, a dynamic to it. There's a depth to it, a density to it. And I start to see the prickly isn't quite prickly, it's sparkly. It's fizzy. Now I'm just giving words to it. You don't have to find the words when you're observing. You're just seeing the different qualities. And you're simply watching these qualities express. The consequence of watching these qualities express is that the observer begins to disintegrate. The separate entity begins to disintegrate. And then we have these glimpses of being this love, this peace, this unity with everything, with nothing. We start to have glimpses of that because we're not interpreting anymore. We're not reaching for something anymore. We're just there, moment to moment, with what is expressing. sometimes that can be very painful, and it seems that the pain is just perpetual. It's not really, but it can feel like that. It's all there is, continuously. And sometimes for a large part of the life, people have only pain. And even they will tell you within the pain there's dynamic. And within the pain there's capacity for deep insight, deep liberation, deep freedom. And yet the pain may still be there. This is a different kind of freedom, not the freedom that the mind is after.